Call to order and roll call.
Chair Goss,
Here.
Vice Chair Noble,
Here.
Commissioner Swap,
Here.
Commissioner Quinn,
Here.
Commissioner Blair and Marino are excused. Do we have to wait for?
We're just gonna get started with some of the business that we have enough people here for.
Okay.
And then we can go back to that.
Okay, okay. Okay. And Commissioner Waters Jr. Will just be arriving a little bit later today. We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. All right, can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Everyone can be seated. All right, next we move to the consideration of public comments. This is a hybrid meeting with in-person attendance. Call to participation and written comments are accepted. In person, those wishing to address the commission in person do not need to pre-register, but space is limited and will be allotted on a first-come, first-served basis. Attendance priorities will be given to presenters first and then non-presenters. Call-ins. Those wishing to address the commission by telephone will need to pre-register by 9 a.m. on September 12, 2022 by emailing planning@cityofkingman.gov and provide their names, address, telephone numbers they will be using, email, and agenda item they would like to comment on. Once registered, a link with additional instructions will be provided. Only those who have pre-registered will be admitted to the meeting. 3. Written comments. All written comments must be submitted prior to 9 a.m. on April 12, 2022 by emailing April 12th, must still be September 12th, emailing planning@cityofkingman.gov or dropping off the comments at the Community Development Department in the main city complex at 310 North 4th Street. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to comment, and all comments will be shared with the council and attached to the minutes for the meeting. Members of the public can watch or listen to the meeting live via Channel 4 or on YouTube at youtube.com/cityofkingman. I have two that were put in, so let's start with Jamie, if you want to come and address us.
Thank you. Commissioners, I just had a few items that I wanted to speak about today. First, I wanted to publicly thank each of you for your service. This is the most important commission that the city has, and you have a really tough job. And so I just appreciate the volunteer time, everything that you give to the city. And I wanted to remind each of you that the city wanted to thank you for your service by holding a barbecue that's this Thursday. It starts at 4 p.m. It's at the golf course. In the grill, they call it now, in the clubhouse. So I hope that each of you can come. I'd really like to see you there. And that's our way of just saying that we really appreciate your time and your effort that you do here. The other item that I wanted to mention tonight is there is a very important meeting happening September 20th. It is at the county admin building, which is 700 West Beale. It is in the supervisor's auditorium. The meeting is with the Arizona Department of Water Resources. It's a public meeting. It's our opportunity as a community to come out and say that we support some water regulations, specifically doing an INA, which is a irrigation non-expansion area for all users of the Wellpipe Basin. And what that really means is that the agriculture that is currently in place in Kingman is grandfathered in. All of those growers can stay, but we would not be allowing any new farms to locate to Kingman, any large commercial scale farms, not small gardens or anything that's under 2 acres. So I can't stress enough how important it is for each of you to come, to bring your neighbors and your family, people you work with. We really need a strong showing of support for this INA, and that's really what the whole meeting is about, is for ADWR to see whether or not the city of Kingman and the users support this item. So if you need any more information, please reach out to me, but I I just really wanted to personally invite all of you to this meeting. And that's all I have, so thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jamie. All right, and next we have Wes. Come on up and address the commission.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Wes Maroney. I would like to bring back the last thoughts of last meeting on the dirt roads in town. And we had some problems here about whether they should be blacktopped by the people that are building the homes or development, or whether we could do it later on and with a promise from them to blacktop the streets, you know. Did you folks, were you able to drive around town yesterday and this morning? No, you couldn't. The city crews were out there doing an excellent job of trying to get those dirt roads back into some condition so people could get out of their yards. My granddaughter took 35 minutes to get to her house from her job that usually takes 5 minutes. I tried to help a guy yesterday who he was not smart enough to take a little Miata out into the dirt road. I tried to put a chain on him to pull him out, which I was not able to because he just didn't have a hook up there, so he got stuck. And so for that reason, I would really like you to put in the back of your minds, for every development that wants to come into Kingman from now on, whether it's a single home, a business, a development, or whatever, they got to put a blacktop road down. This dirt road sections is just not working for us. We're a big city. We want to have people come here, and it's just ridiculous to have dirt roads in Kingman. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Next, we need to approve the meeting minutes from August 9th. So, does anybody want to give a motion to do that?
I'll make a motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All right, those are good then. Okay, let's jump to old business. Do you want to move, like, go down for that one, or do you want me to do the reports?
This one,
It's that one?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We'll do the first one then. All right, we'll start with the conditional use permit case CUP 21-0001, extension of time. A request from Dion and Marnie Lauk, applicants and property owners, for an extension of time of up to 1 year for a conditional use permit to allow mini storage warehousing on proposed zoned C3 commercial service business. The subject property is located at 3421 Harrison Street, immediately north of the Kingman Academy of Learning Intermediate School. The site is approximately 1.88 acres and is described as the north 132nd of southeast 1/4 of Government Lot 2, excerpt the East 40, Section 7, T period 121N period R period 16W of the G and SRM, Mojave County, Arizona, APN 320-10-076. The conditional use permit approved by the City of Kingman Planning and Zoning Commission on August 10th, 2021 is set to expire on August 26th, 2022 unless an extension of time is granted.
Chair, I need to recuse myself on this item.
Okay. That's fine. Are you all set for a report, Gary?
Oh, I think you actually have to come off the dais,
Okay. I'm gonna
so there's
recuse
no
myself.
undue influence,
Okay.
or perceived as such, I guess.
And the next one too.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. As you mentioned, this is the conditional use permit for an extension of time. The proposal at 3421 for mini storage warehousing was approved last year, and that's why the case number is CUP 21, which refers to the year. The owners are Dion and Marnie Locke, and this is a mini storage warehousing properties request on property zone C3, commercial service business. And here on the map is the zoning of the area. This is south of Airway. It is on Harrison, and it's in a red box there with the red star. And the property is directly north of the what is it, the Kingman Academy?
The intermediate school?
Yeah, it's the intermediate school, thank you. And south of the Unisource facilities, and there's, I'll go into some of the land uses, but that's the vicinity. We have, the dark red is the C3, which is what the property has, and there's some residential to the west, residential to the east, the R4, lighter commercial to the south, and then Centennial Park beyond that, which is in green. And I mentioned some of that. I should have gone to this slide. I'm filling in for Rich, by the way, tonight, because he wasn't able to present this last month, so I'm filling in for him tonight. He's conveniently labeled all the uses there, so appreciate that. And these are also the utilities shown here. The property there is in the middle. It's the 320-10-076, that long, narrow lot. There is a 12-inch sewer main in Harrison and 8-inch water line there. There's some site photos that Rich took. He didn't say what, yeah, that's facing, aimed towards the west there. Again, the long, narrow lot. The conditional use permit process now requires the citizen review process. And it does not require conditional use permits to also go to city council for an additional hearing. So there was some big changes last year when we amended the code. The citizen review process was followed by the applicant, and that included having 2 neighborhood meetings or holding 2 neighborhood meetings. And that's after notifying property owners within 300 feet of that meeting or those meetings. There were no attendees and no comments received at either meeting. Notice of the public hearing, we noticed of this meeting last year, but we also noticed for it this year. I'm not sure why it's saying 7/21 there. Let me check something in the staff report, which you should have in your possession there. I don't have the updated numbers, so I'm assuming Rich meant to put 7/22 in there. Yeah. Okay, the department and other agencies provide comments when we send them proposed applications for various land use applications, and we received feedback from the fire department and building life safety inspector. The proposed building square footage requires sprinklers. These can be addressed on construction drawings, and Frontier Communications mentioned no objections to the proposed storage. Unisource will ask for a 16-foot wide utility easement running from the east to the west of the property. Mojave County Flood Control, no comments. The site plan, I won't go through everything because you actually have heard this before, and you have this staff report, which is more in depth. But we did go over the site plan last time after having a pre-application meeting with them. So a lot of things have been worked out. But ultimately, when they apply for a building permit, it'll be refined even more to make sure it meets every standard that's available. These conditional use permit applications generally are conceptual site plans that are meant to be refined later. Here's just a visual of running from the right is east and to the left is west. Will be the entrance onto Harrison, and then some detention pond areas on the west side of the property. Just mention that the project is subject to the new architectural design standards, which minimize the percentage of bare metal and encourages other design elements as well. So, west side there, detention pond area. Again, the analysis, we've gone over that in a public hearing before. I won't go over that again. But staff did find that these items were met if conditioned. Not sure. There, so staff still recommends the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit and extend the application deadline, their extension of time for 1 year from the date that it was last, when the conditional use permit would have expired. So in that case, and it's not provided on here, I'm not sure why. But again, in your staff report, that's why we have that.
We have that it's set to expire August 26th, 2022.
Yeah.
2020,
2022. So,
And
it should be 2023.
if we renew it, it would be set to expire 2023,
Yes,
August 26th.
yeah. That's when the last CUP would have expired, but they applied before that expired, so.
okay.
But nevertheless, the extension starts from that time. So with that, we, of course, all the conditions the same, just the extension of time for 1 year. Thank you. I have any questions? And I'm not sure who from the applicant or the public are here to speak on this, so.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Gary? No? Okay, thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
All right, I'll now open this up to public comment. If anybody has any comments to make, they can approach the microphone and address the council. Nope. Okay, then I will close public comment and open up commission discussion.
It seems pretty cut and dry. It doesn't seem like there's any reason not to renew this.
I agree.
Commissioner Goss, yeah, I approved this last time. I don't see any real change in reasons why I shouldn't now, so I'm in favor of extending that.
Okay, can we get a motion then?
I'll motion to approve staff recommendations for the renewal of this application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other further comment? Nope. All right, roll call vote.
Chair Goss,
Approve.
Commissioner Swap,
Approve.
Commissioner Quinn,
Approve.
Commissioner Waters.
Approve.
Any opposed? Motion approved.
Thank you. All right, the next one is the conditional use permit case CUP 22-0004. This is a request from John Hanson, applicant, and Western States Self-Storage LLC, property owner, for a conditional use permit CUP to allow expansion of mini storage warehousing on property zone commercial, service business C3. The subject property is 1.59 acres and is located on 1212 Gordon Drive, Kingman, Arizona 86409. The property is further described as a portion of parcel F as shown on RS 3/47/27/1989 fee number 84-28071, government lot 7, section .6 T.21N.R.16W, APN 32003-246. Can we have a report from staff?
Yes, thank you, Commission Chair, members of the commission. Just bringing this up here. Okay, again, this is conditional use permit CUP 22-004 for mini storage warehousing at 1212 Gordon Drive. The applicant is John Hanson, property owner, Western States Self-Storage. As was mentioned, this is a request for an approval of a CUP for mini storage warehousing on property zone C3 at 1212 Gordon. And you can see in this zoning map here, the subject property is outlined in red and labeled as subject site. The property to the north, properties to the north and to the east are similarly zoned. And then the property to the south and to the west are generally residential zones, the R16, R15A, and R2. And this is just south of Gordon and just west of Stockton Hill Road. Here's an aerial photo of the property. These are the surrounding land uses. As you can expect with the zoning, there's residential to the west and to the south. So it borders the subject site on the west and the south. And then to the east and the north are commercial uses, including office, real estate, auto repair, etc. We also have the U-Haul mini storages, if that helps you get your bearings even better, just to the north of Gordon Drive there, the large facility. Some of the utilities and physical characteristics. We've got the topographical lines here showing the general elevation changes of the property. The property will basically drain naturally to the southeast, which is where you'll see later they proposed, and I think they currently have a detention pond area. There's a 12-inch water main along Gordon and a 6-inch sewer main along Gordon as well. So the site does have utility access. There's a site photo looking into the driveway, looking south. So that's the gate that you go down that little neck driveway down into the property, and then that gate would be where you would access the site. And those buildings that you see on the left and right are existing storage units. The property was originally built, I'm not sure, again, I'm filling in for Rich on this, so I may repeat myself a little bit, but as you can see on the property currently, there are, if you count them, that looks like 9 buildings, but I think there's technically 10 structures out there that are individual storage facilities, same property, same owner and everything, but that's what you have there now. And then again, looking south, you can see some of those existing buildings on the left and right. They did, the applicant and property owner did hold 2 neighborhood meetings on April 26th and 27th, and they notified surrounding property owners within 300 feet. There were a total of 3 attendees, 1 the first night, and then, as they mentioned, a married couple the second night. And concerns were expressed regarding exterior lighting, building height, and hours of operation, which we're doing a lot of mini storage lately, so we're getting used to some of the similar concerns or things that people want to know about. We also, as staff, notified of this public hearing within the 300 feet. The site was posted with a sign of the zoning hearing, as well as put in the Kingman minor. One comment from the public was received. It was from one of the attendees, and the concerns again were about potential view obstruction and exterior lighting, so building heights would be part of that. Department and agency comments. The fire department mentioned that they'll need to install a fire hydrant to meet fire code requirements. Fire apparatus roads need to comply with fire code requirements of a minimum of 20 feet drive aisle width, which currently it's exactly 20 feet on the existing structures, and 26 feet at fire hydrant locations. Building official just mentioned that of course the buildings will have to comply with adopted codes and ordinances. Unisource, no objections. Flood control, no objections. And engineering comments are listed in the staff report and are embedded in sort of the analysis of this, and also reflected in the conditions of approval that are proposed. The analysis, as I mentioned, there's 10 existing storage units based on the recent survey. The conceptual site plan indicates that total gross floor area of new buildings will be about 10,200 square feet. Storage units will be accessed through that 20-foot wide driveway, and I have to mention it's 25 feet from Gordon wide, but it narrows down to 20 as you get into the property, as I read the site plan and survey. The paved internal driveways will be located between the units. Parallel parking spaces will be provided in the internal spaces basically in front of the storage units themselves. It's kind of a creative way to address parking for storage units. So we might see that on a site plan a little later here. A detention pond is in the southeast corner of the property, and that will need to be adequately sized and shown to meet standards to when they apply for site plan review and the building permit in the future. And yeah, the ultimate site plan will be modified to make sure the project complies with all the codes, regulations, and conditions that the P&Z Commission may place. Here's the survey that was done. Doesn't really tell you much that I haven't told you already, but it is always welcome that when a builder or developer provides a survey with these, so we know exactly what we're dealing with. So that's there. It's also in your staff report. This is the conceptual site plan. I'm not sure how well it comes up there, but if you can take the slide and turn it so Gordon on the right side is facing on the top, that would be north. So Gordon is to the north. So you come down into the property through that neck from Gordon, and then you pass the existing structures, mini storage units, and then a little bolder black line there, you can see the proposed buildings that the applicant is requesting. So they don't have an existing conditional use permit, and I should have mentioned this. When they first initially built these, it wasn't required, and then after adoption of a code amendment a while back, I think it was 1990 potentially or later, it required a conditional use permit. And I guess the applicant did apply for conditional use permit, but it expired before they could build back then. So now, to expand a mini storage unit, you do have to secure a conditional use permit. So we have to kind of treat part of this as existing and part of it as an expansion. So those buildings in more bold line there are the expanded buildings. And then if you can see those X boxes there, I don't know if you can tell what I'm talking about. Those are the creative placement of the parallel parking spaces. And that is unique to the mini storage units. But because we have been dealing with these lately, we've refined the standards a bit. And I'm not sure if it'll go into it more later, but the drive aisle widths are dictated by fire code and by the city's adopted parking standards. So if they provide those parking spaces in those X spots, then the drive aisle has to be 27 feet there to be, and also be painted as and labeled as one-way access. And then as you see there, there's a little line coming from Gordon. It'll say W on it. That's the water line that we spoke of, or I mentioned earlier, and that would access that proposed fire hydrant location. And in that location, the drive aisle has to be 26 feet and not be one way and not have parking. So that's just kind of give you an idea of the site and the proposal. In the lower left there, you can see the proposed detention pond or expansion. And then also there's a roll gate that we may mention later on the bottom of that slide there. It's a roll gate onto an adjacent property, not currently necessarily approved for access to the site. The CUPs are approved by or considered and decided on by the Planning and Zoning Commission rather than having two hearings, as I mentioned in the previous hearing. Unless they're appealed at this level, then they go to the City Council. The required findings for a conditional use permit are that the proposal must be consistent with the objectives of the code and purpose of the zone in which it's located. Many storages are allowed with a conditional use permit in the C3 zone, and so we have many in the C3 zone. It's a very natural use of this type of zone. It's our heavier commercial zone. Granting of the conditional use permit will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. There's no apparent nuisances or hazards that are likely to be generated from this that are anticipated. Limitation of hours could be considered. It is proposed in the conditions of approval to limit those. Storage of hazardous material is already prohibited. Stormwater basin will need to be designed and constructed per the city standards. Significant traffic's not anticipated. At the bottom of that slide there, it says estimated 2 to 3 trips would occur during peak hours. But I believe if you look in the staff report, Rich had provided 2 to 3 trips is what currently it would generate. And by adding this expansion and using the ITE traffic engineering manuals, it would be about 4 to 6 trips during peak hours. So it increased to 4 to 6 trips. Characteristics of the proposed use are compatible with the surrounding area. Bulk regulations in the C3 zone are meant to address those items. However, the C3 zone does allow for a pretty tall building to be constructed there. And the surrounding property owners were concerned about their view and things like that, but the applicant mentioned that it's a 12-foot height of the buildings, which is normal around that range for these types of buildings, so no 2 or 3 stories are proposed. And the building setbacks are generally 0 in the C3 zone, but along these residential areas, they have a 10-foot setback, and that's been shown on their conceptual plan. The minimum parking requirements, I've gone over that with you. The site appears to be adequate and compatible for mini storage or mini warehouse storage. There are no specific open space requirements for mini storage. And I mentioned there's no known externalities or anticipated, such as noise, light, visual, or other pollutants that already code wouldn't address now and through enforcement. Architectural standards, if the buildings are visible from the right-of-way, they'll have to adhere to that metal standard and other design standards. But the closest building is to be about 250 feet away. Again, this slide continues with the compatibility. There will need to be a landscape plan submitted with their building permit. Public utilities can be accommodated. As I mentioned, they have water and sewer. There'll be a landscape water meter that needs to be installed, and more details about that, but I won't go into that. Signage and outdoor lighting. Signage is generally by separate permit anyway. Lighting does require fully shielded wall pack lights. Fixtures within 50 feet of a residential zone or public right-of-way need to have internal or external shields. And staff recommends, which we've done on other recent mini storage unit CUPs, is to make sure that there's a condition that says no direct light source is visible from the subject property to the west of the site. So that's seeing the element, the actual light source, which can be very blinding for especially security lights. No additional dedications right away are required, no historic, prehistoric, or natural resources on the property. Planning staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit to allow the expansion of the mini storage at 1212 Gordon Drive with the following conditions. And one is to limit operational hours from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. to ensure compatibility with surrounding residential land uses. The grading and drainage plans need to be provided with the site plan and building permit. If the access is intended for that gate to the east, as I showed on the original plan, they would need to get an ingress egress easement across that property for that. I mentioned the design standards, that's embedded in here. The landscape plan will be required. Internal driveways need to be paved with asphalt or concrete or similar surfacing. And the driveway width standards are listed in here. And the marking of the 27-foot aisle width for parallel parking one way, that's in here. The on-site fire hydrant requirement, that's a condition of approval in here. And then, of course, the 20-foot wide easement to accommodate that water line to the fire hydrants in here. And then the outdoor lighting that I mentioned. And I'll just end on leaving the site plan up here for you. I'm not sure if the applicant's here or public testimony, but I'm here for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Gary. Does anyone have any questions of Gary?
I do. You mentioned lighting in the west. Is that where the family who sent the letter in, is that where their home is? Their backyard is?
Actually, the applicant, if they're here, they might address that, because I'm not sure exactly which property they own, but they're within 300 feet.
Gary, I'll go ahead and address that. That person who, or the couple, they were actually here at the last meeting. They did pose the question to us after the meeting of, we don't even know what the ordinances are. And we explained to them what our current zoning ordinances are, to where the lighting can't be shining out. It has to have a guard and everything else. Based upon that, they were satisfied, and obviously they're not here today, so.
Awesome. Thanks for that information. I have a second question as well. I think that I was reading that these were originally built in the 1990s, the original buildings. Does staff have any recommendations about matching architecture or any aesthetics that are important when they're building this, or are they able to just do whatever they want?
Well, that's a good question. We definitely can't make them address the units existing already. And those would be the likely ones that would have to address the design standards because they're oriented towards Gordon.
Right.
And they're closer to Gordon. As you go further back, they're less visible from the public right of way. So they're likely to not have to adhere to those standards. So they could be generally metal buildings back there, but at 12 feet in height and with surrounding fencing, it's likely to be not visible from adjacent property. But if they are visible from the public right-of-way, which we'll do a site line analysis of it, they would have to address the design standards. So I don't know if they're going to be 100% compatible looking with the existing buildings, but I imagine they might be. But the applicant might mention that.
Okay. So the only recommendation from staff revolves around whether it's visible from Gordon.
Yeah, we're basically restating what the code says.
Right.
And just putting it in there as a reminder / condition.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
And then, I'm sorry, just one other question. That additional roll gate driveway, is that something that we need to have other information about, or?
I don't think so, but actually, Sean, who was just speaking, Sean Osherman, he represents fire as well, and I don't think that roll gate is necessary for fire access, but if they are proposing it, that's when the conditions were saying that you need to record an easement. So Sean might mention if that was in the pre-app meetings and things, that it was considered a requirement or should be.
So for us, the roll gate is not a requirement. The only requirement from the fire department's standpoint is if there is a roll gate, we would need access. And we have ways of doing that through our Knox program, to where there would be a switch installed to where we put our handy dandy special little key in, we turn it, it opens up. So that's not an issue or anything like that for us.
Okay. But the builder would not be able to just create another driveway and without getting approval.
Correct. It actually exists right now. I believe that the access and gate onto the adjacent property, but I don't believe there's an existing easement for that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions for Gary?
Yeah, Chair Goss, Mr. Likeness, regarding the fire criteria, is there an alarm that's loud enough for to be heard inside of the homes adjacent to this property? Also, I know there's a theater nearby. I'm just thinking, if there is a fire, it's good that we have some sort of suppression, but also some sort of a noise loud enough to maybe alert these people that might be in a movie theater, or people that are in their home listening to something.
Yeah, I think if I'm right, the movie theater that you're talking about is doesn't show up on the aerial photos.
Yeah,
but it's not directly adjacent, but
No.
Sean again can mention any kind of fire alarm that might be audible.
Right, so in this case, a fire alarm would not be required. However, depending upon how the building's built and the square footage, there's thresholds on if a sprinkler system would be required. I'm trying to remember, like Gary has said, we've had multiple pre-app meetings and concept plan meetings for a lot of these. I'm pretty certain that we addressed that. So the building code requires the distance between buildings and property lines to be addressed, right? And so I believe in this case that is addressed. It'd be a fire-rated wall along that side at a minimum. And then the other thing to remember too is that the space between this property and the residential properties is pretty drastic. So if there was a fire, the distance is either going to be if there was a fire, it's either going to be fire rated to protect the adjoining properties, and or the spacing, it's meeting the spacing requirement. So the building code and fire code both address that. And we just go by what those codes are.
Yeah, Chair Goss, Mr. Osterman, yeah, the main concern I had was the smoke. I know people can store whatever they want in these things for the most part, and
Okay.
just if there's a fire, again, it's probably too far, like you point out, for the movie theater, but just somewhere where people are tied up and they might not hear or know that there's a fire going on. They could be choking on chemicals or something.
Right. So kind of how what we take into consideration here is in actuality, people really truly can't put in there whatever they want. So the items that they would be storing in there would be just the same as would be in a normal residential or commercial property, right? So it's kind of six one half dozen another. We could go in and start regulating this stuff, but then we would have to do it on every single property, which I feel that's infringing on their rights. In the case that there is a sprinkler system in there, there would be an audible alarm or bell to indicate that those have been activated. That's a part of the code. But as far as an alarm, I mean, it's smoke is smoke. It doesn't matter. I mean, do your best not to breathe it. And then keeping in mind the movie theater, the way that the HVAC systems and things like that are designed, it's not going to be taking air from the outside, right? The only exchange really truly that is supposed to come from that is when you open a door, you'll get air exchange that way. And then I do know they have certain type of exhaust fans that are based upon a CO2 device, because obviously they have soda machines and they have lots of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and things that can get created in there. It's when it reaches a certain level, fan turns on and it evacuates out of the building. So again, that's coming out. But as far as that goes, for the people in the areas, really it's no different than any other commercial property that would be there.
Understood. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Chair, I might just mention again that the applicant and their representative might be here if you have more detailed questions as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gary. Do you have any more questions for Gary or staff? No? All right, then I'm going to close that down. Thank you so much, Gary, and open up the public comment. Do we have any discussion from the public? No? All right, I see none. I'm going to open up commission discussion on this item now. Does anybody have anything to go over? Does anybody want to hear from the applicant if they're here?
It seems pretty straightforward to me. I mean, we've just approved 3 of these, one in the nearby location. I don't see any issue with it. Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay. Well then, can I get a motion? And just keep in mind the conditions that were on there when you're making your motions.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit to allow the mini storage warehouse with the conditions set out by the city to relocate the trash receptacle, that all interior sides of the storage unit be located closest to Harrison Street, be composed of materials conforming with the code, that we dedicate any utility easements needed, and that we provide fire sprinklers to proposed buildings or revisions as necessary in accordance with the fire code.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? Can I get a roll call vote?
Chair Goss,
Can I just ask one question? Did you go through all conditions 1 through 10? Or did you just say 1 through 10?
Chair Goss, I went through 1 through 4 for the staff
Because
recommendations
there's
here.
10.
Oh, is there 10?
So that was just my question.
Might be looking at the wrong page, and we do want to get that. If someone else has it, if they want to remake the motion.
Do you have Gary, do you have the conditions of approval slide you could throw up there?
We could just do it
Madam
with
Chair,
staff
they're-
recommendations, right?
They're on page 9 of the staff report.
Okay. There's 10 of them, so I just want to make sure you guys have all seen them.
I'll make a motion to approve conditional use permit 22-004 with the 10 staff recommendations.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I get a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second? No? All right, let me get a roll call vote then.
Chair Goss,
Approve.
Commissioner Swap,
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn,
Approve.
Commissioner Waters,
Approve.
unanimous, motion passed.
Great, thank you so much. All right, you're welcome to come join us again if you want for the report. All right, I'm just going to move on to the report section then. The boards and commission ordinance update. We just have a report from Sean Osterman.
So good evening, Chair and members of the commission. The last meeting, there was some questions that were brought up in reference to some of the changes that were made within our ordinance and how it affected this commission. As asked, I don't have a slide presentation or anything else. It's pretty simple. I think everybody's pretty much aware of where we're at with that. A couple of pointers I'd like to make out is that the City Council passed Ordinance 1943, which changes the some of the aspects of serving on the board, right? And so essentially they changed that there can't be a professional domination of memberships, right? So meaning if we were, everybody on this commission was a builder, a developer, this or that, that has to do with development within the city, it couldn't have a quorum or members that were solely from those types of industries, right? All commission members must live within the city of Kingman. In the case that, and this doesn't really apply to this board, but it's all the way across the board. This was enacted for all boards, right? But basically, in the case of where a membership applicant has special knowledge relating to this particular commission, right? And they lived outside of the city, we could allow that. But again, remember, that has to go through the council and they have to approve that, right? So a couple other things is the term limits have changed. And essentially, if you have 3 or more unexcused absences, you're pretty much automatically terminated from the commission. Keep in mind that if you are going to be absent, in order to have an excused absence, you need to make contact with our office a minimum of 24 hours prior to the meeting, okay? So that's just kind of a pointer for you guys on that. And then no longer allowing the formation of subcommittees. We don't have any subcommittees here, but some of the other commissions and boards have subcommittees within those to where people get together outside and this and that and everything else. So that is no longer allowed per our ordinance. They've standardized the terms for all commissions to be a 4-year term. You can only be appointed to a commission for 2 terms in a row. So essentially the way that I'm understanding and interpreting that is that you can serve for 8 years consecutively, but then you have to be off the commission for 4 years before you can come back, okay? So in our case with this commission, I don't know that 100% is gonna be what's best for our commission. There is talk and discussion of maybe amending that in a way that it would benefit us a little bit more. I do plan to meet with Mr. Foggin and Attorney Cooper to try and see what we can do with that. More to come, essentially, on that. The last part is what the basically the terms that you're in. They said, okay, if you've served at this point All right, unfortunately, we want all the commissions to be commission members to when they expire and they're no longer, they've served their 8 years and/or certain amounts of time, right? We had to have a threshold, so they made their threshold. And unfortunately, as you can see, that currently all but one of our members are eligible to be reappointed again, right? Again, in our case, I'm not quite sure that that's going to be in the best interest of the citizens and/or our commission. So that will also be a point of conversation when I bring that up to Mr. Fogg and Mr. Cooper. Does anybody have any questions for me on any of that? Pretty straightforward.
I don't have any questions, but we appreciate you looking into it and
Absolutely.
doing some work for us.
I also wanted to let you know, too, that you guys did request a presentation on where we're at with the streets and the pavement and responsibilities and things like that. There's a lot to it, so I'm kind of struggling because we're pulling from multiple different regulations. We're pulling some from the planning and zoning regulations, some from the streets regulations, some from the utility regulations, right, when it comes to this. So there's a lot of information, a lot of stuff there. So I've got majority of it together. I just didn't have it complete for this meeting. So the next meeting I will be giving you guys a report on that. Primarily with this commission, what our responsibilities are.
Great, thank you so
All right?
much.
Thank you.
All right, last we just have announcements by commission members. These are limited to announcements, availability, or attendance at conferences, seminars, requests for agenda items for future meetings, and requests for reports from staff. We can't have any discussion on any of these items. Do you have anything? No? I will just say that I went to the conference that they had for the APA down in Scottsdale, and it was great. So if any of you guys have a chance to go to one of those conferences, I would highly recommend it. There's just so much information that they give that you can bring back and just keep in mind of what other people are doing, and it's a lot of good things to know. So we'll say if you have the opportunity to do that, I would 100% go and do that. But if we don't have any more announcements, then thank you everybody for attending. We are adjourned. Not anymore. They got rid of it.